I'm welcoming Pastor Ben Tugwell for a conversation. Ben is he's a hospital chaplain, and I'm really interested in hearing more about the role of hospital chaplaincy and the challenges I think that come with that as well. But Ben, welcome, and thanks for taking the time to come on the channel. Okay, because between everything, I know you're busy. Introduce yourself. Some people will know you. Introduce yourself to those people who don't know you, would you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, my name is Ben, as Gwyneth just said. I'm a pastor and a chaplain, so I work for Cardiff and Vale University Health Board, and I'm on the pastoral team at Beacon Church, Cowbridge. I think you've interviewed Chris before, and so Chris is the senior pastor of that church. And I work for Cardiff. I'm a Cardiff boy, so born and raised in Cardiff. Unfortunately, I don't speak Welsh, but I will learn to speak Welsh soon. Exactly. I'm a Manchester United fan, and that's probably the most important thing that you need to know about me.
Viewing figures are just going to go right down on this video now, Ben. I'm sorry.
But passionate about God, passionate about seeing God's kingdom grow. Really, as cliche as that sounds, it's also a truth. I'm very blessed within my job. So I've been a chaplain for about nearly 5 years now, I think. Gosh. So a little while. And
straight from school though, because you still look young.
Yeah, no, not quite. So I got a theology degree with Chris Bullock. We studied at Regent's Theological College, which is in Malvern, West Malvern, in England, but on the border. And I left there during COVID without a job. So saying to God, okay, where do you want me to be? What do you want me to do? I worked in an after-school club with children, and I was also in a funeral home. So both scales, both ends of life. Gosh. Became a TA. And then when I was a TA, the opportunities came up to start chaplain. I knew I was called into sort of ministry and church ministry. But the opportunity to become a chaplain came up. So I took that, and then I became a pastor within a church, sort of similar times. And then from there, I moved over to Beacon, but I've been in the same health board since then. So it's been a good little ride.
Lovely. I'm picking up on the way that you said that went to Malvern, which is in England, and then you emphasized it's on the border. Okay. What you were saying was, guys, I didn't go too far away. Don't you worry. I didn't leave Wales completely. I could see Wales over there.
Yeah, exactly. We had great views of Wales in West Malvern. So it's if you ever go to Malvern, it's worth going to West Malvern just so that you can see Wales.
Brilliant. But I did pick that up. Listen, hospital chaplain. Okay. It's a familiar sort of role, right, to a lot of people, but I'm not sure how many people, including myself, actually know what the nitty-gritty of the role is, right? Explain to us, what's involved with being a hospital chaplain. Maybe, give a little bit of a job description in a way. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I think often when we think of hospital chaplain, we think of a minister or pastor coming to sit in by your bedside, reading you a Bible verse or giving you a little bit of an encouragement while you sort of sip your tea, and then they go off and see somebody else. And I often get a lot of people say to me, "Oh, what a lovely job. It's a great job." But oftentimes when
this is why I want you to expand on it, so that those people who say, lovely job actually know the reality. So go on. Sorry.
Well, exactly. Yeah, exactly. The reality of chaplaincy is very difficult. And I think the average chaplain only lasts for about 5 years within the role before they get burnout. Mainly because there's a few different things and layers that we have to build. Firstly, we need to understand that we work for a secular organization. So whether that's in the prison service or whether that's in a hospital, a chaplain is a person of faith working for an organization of no faith. And there's always clashes and always a tension there because they don't fully understand or give grace. So for your local church minister, if he was to say, okay, this work day, I'm going to do no work in terms of visiting or anything like that. I'm just going to go spend time with God. I'm going to take my Bible, I'm going to pray, and that's what I'm going to do all day. I think that would be a good way for a pastor and minister to spend their day in reflecting and making sure they're close with God. Now, if I said that to my health board, they would say, you're having a laugh. There's no chance that you're going to be able to do that. So you've got a tension there between what does it mean to be spiritual within an organization. That's a tension that a lot of people walk. Teachers, all different kinds of people walk that tension as well. And we have to recognize that tension and the difficulty of that tension. Then on top of that, as a chaplain within a hospital and health board setting, we are really dealing with people at their worst. So very rarely do I see somebody at their best. I'm constantly meeting patients or people. If you're in hospital, you don't usually choose to be in hospital. And they are going through a life crisis of some sort, whether that's a broken leg and they're thinking about their future, their job, their work, how's that going to change, or whether that's the reality of death. And oftentimes hospital confronts us with the reality that one day we won't be on this earth anymore. One day we won't be living as freely as we are. And so hospital chaplaincy is really journeying with these people from Christian faith, other religious background, or no faith, to help understand and grapple those big spiritual questions that we all journey through. What's the point of this? Is this really all there is? Has my life got any meaning? All of those questions that we all journey and are all seeking to find out come out when you're dealing with death. Now, the difficulty we have is it's such a pleasure and a privilege to be able to journey with people. But the difficulty is that I'm dealing with that while people are dying. So I'm journeying with people and I'm never seeing them fully recover often. Only a handful of occasions do you see people make a swift turnaround. And it means that often you're meeting patients, you're having conversations with them on a Wednesday and building genuine relationship with them. And then on the Thursday when I walk in to go and visit them, they're no longer there. And that's difficult and that takes a toll. And that's happens from old patients, and then it also happens with infants and newborns. You know, the other week I had two on the same day, two neonatal deaths that I had to go and deal with. And it's difficult and it's hard and it's mentally taxing, and you need to make sure you spend time alone with God. I often think about Jesus going away to lonely places with the Father. And I think sometimes, you know, Jesus is God. He doesn't have to go away to lonely places to find God or anything like that. He himself is God. But he goes away to spend time with the Father because he understands he needs to be refilled for the journey and the difficulties that are ahead of him. And I think it's really important. It's something important for a chaplain's life particularly, is making sure that you're spent time away in lonely places to be able to journey and work out your feelings, your thoughts, to pray, to fast, whatever you want to do or need to do. So it can be a very heavy job often. I work for, as I say, Cardiff and Vale. So we have about 7-8 hospitals that we look after. We're all generic hospitals, although we have acute services. So we deal with palliative patients. In England, it's very different, and it's worth saying that in England, they run trusts, not health boards. So their hospitals in England are acute hospitals with a trained chaplain specifically looking after that hospital. So, for example, they're dealing with end of life or they're dealing with mental health, but that's the only thing they're dealing with. In Wales, we have health boards. So we're dealing with all of those things. We've got an acute mental health hospital here. We've got lots of end-of-life patients that we deal with. So we're constantly children's hospital. We're constantly having to change our disciplines almost within the healthcare setting to make sure that we're able to cope with all the different people. So it's a hard job. Often, I think a minister said to me once when he found out I was a chaplain, he said to me that I had taken the way out of ministry to become a chaplain. And I think being a chaplain has helped me learn that couldn't be more wrong. That there is pressure and there is difficulty that you face mentally and spiritually, and it challenges you. It challenges your theology. And I'm open with that. You know, I'm a Pentecostal and believe God heals and ministers, restores and breaks through in many, many ways. But when you're faced with death on such a large scale, often it has to challenge your theology of healing and why God heals and why he doesn't always heal. You know, I came out of Bible college really pumped up, really believing in things like, you know, the story of Lazarus where Jesus raises someone from the dead. But when you get confronted with the first dead body that you see, you have to journey on that theology. What do I do here? Do I pray with faith that that body rises? Do I lay on hands? Like, what do I do here? And the journey that I've been on is that miracles do happen. They still do happen, but they don't always happen. And having a healthy understanding of miracles and why God does what God does is really important, to hold lightly the truth that we have. So we still firmly believe God heals. We still firmly believe God saves. We still firmly believe God resurrects. But he doesn't do it all the time. And actually, true resurrection and true healing comes in our next life. So the journey that I've been on, the hospital, has challenged me. My theology has challenged my thoughts. It's challenged the way I react to situations. I started as an introvert. I didn't really want to.
Did you really? Gosh.
Yeah. So it's the funniest job. It's the worst job for me to be in. When I first started here, one of the hardest things for me was just to go out and speak to people, to break the ice and actually have a conversation with people, because, you know, you're going up to patients at the bedside and that's their home.
And here you are now on national YouTube channel.
Exactly.
And you've come a long way. You've come a long way.
Now. Yeah, exactly. So it changes and it adapts you and it molds you. Chaplaincy does, and it has to. But I think, you know, when grapes are pressed, that's when you get the best wine, and so you have to be pressed. And I think it's a work, as long as you're with God and journeying with God through it, it is a work where God presses you and molds you, and hopefully then the end result is better than the beginning.
Yeah. You know, as I was sort of preparing for this, and, you know, shared with you what I was likely to ask you and things, it's dawned on me what a challenging job this is. That, you know, and that's one reason I wanted you to make it clear that it's not a piece of cake. It's not an easy job. This is a really challenging job, and you've shared that already. You know, some aspects of it. What gifts do you feel you have that God has given you that's enabled you to sort of do such a challenging job?
That's a good question, Gwyneth. I think, truthfully,
because it's not for the faint-hearted, is it? As in Christian ministry, it's not for the faint-hearted. Go on.
I think one of my favourite characteristics, I'm kind of scooting around the question here, but I think one of my favourite characteristics of Jesus is his meekness.
Okay.
So blessed are the meek. That Jesus walked humbly and meek in the world around us and was willing to adapt and change. Not truth. We're not talking about issues of truth or whatever, but Jesus was able to walk humbly and meet with people where they were at. And that's something that I want to be. And I think chaplaincy has caused me to be. I have been. My ministry style is often charismatic, often sort of champion the church to, you know, say a loud prayer out loud together and make some noise and all the rest of it. And really, that's always been my mentality and my thought process of you know, make noise. Heaven's going to be loud, so let's get people ready for that. And trying to be humble in your work and understand that I could be wrong. I'm human. I could be wrong, and I could be making mistakes, and I need God to adapt, and I need God to mold me and move me. It's been really, really precious within the role of chaplaincy, to understand that I'm just here trying to wash people's feet fundamentally.
Gosh.
Wherever they are, whatever they look like, my role isn't to win them over in any way, shape, or form. And that's important, that, you know, we're not allowed to evangelize within chaplaincy. You're not allowed to evangelize in chaplaincy outwardly. If someone asks me a question, I can respond, but I can't go up to a bed and say, have you ever met Jesus? Do you want to meet Jesus? I can't do that. So everything has to be done through relationship, and modeling Jesus within a chaplaincy role is sometimes the best way to show Jesus. And that is by sitting down next to somebody and listening to them, even when I think I've got other things I could be doing, but sitting down and letting somebody speak and letting somebody be heard. I had there was one patient a little while ago that I was walking past, and I said, "Oh, hello," and he said, "Oh, no, not for me." I said, "Oh, that's no problem." He said, "Yeah." He said, "I mean, no disrespect by this, but the cloth means absolutely nothing to me. I don't believe in any of it." I said, "Oh, that's completely fine. Like, you know, I'm not gonna, you know, I'm just here to have a chat. If you want to have a chat about anything." And so we had a chat about his life. We just started chatting about his life and where he was from and what he had done for work. And I was praying, and I think this is really important. People say, you know, how do I evangelize to my friends? How do I speak to my family members about Jesus? And I always find that if you pray, God, give me an opportunity to speak about you here, there always seems to be an opportunity that comes up somehow. And I was having this conversation with this gentleman. I was just praying within my soul, you know, God, give me an opportunity to speak to you about you. I know he says he doesn't want to know anything about you, but give me an opportunity. And having this conversation, and suddenly this guy brings up, you know, Jesus to me and starts talking to me about Jesus. And I thought it was absolutely fantastic, and starts having a conversation of his issues with the church, why he doesn't believe, etc., etc. And I was able just to be there with him. And I always think about him. He didn't say, yes, I want to become a Christian. You know, I didn't lead him to salvation in that moment. But I always think about how amazing it would be to see his face in heaven. And all I did was sow a seed. That's all I could do in that situation, have a conversation. I don't know what he would do with that conversation afterwards, where Jesus would lead him, or the Holy Spirit could draw him. And I think fundamentally that's our roles as well. Wash people's feet, sow a seed. But I think that actually that just reflects what we should be doing as Christians. And as a chaplain, you know, I've got a specific role. You know, you can't just become a chaplain like that. You have to apply for roles. You need to make sure you've got a denominational backing, etc., etc. There's a few different things that you need to do to be a chaplain. But I think ultimately what we do as chaplaincy is what we should be doing as Christians, as followers of Jesus. And that is, we wash people's feet and we sow seeds. We wash people's feet and we sow seeds. And sometimes people come to us and they usually already had a seed sown into them, and they're ready for us to water and watch the harvest come.
Yeah, I think what strikes me as well, Ben, about that gentleman is he was obviously internalizing a lot of thoughts and feelings and emotions, but you were there as the sounding board for him to be able to release that, okay, and for you then to, you know, have that conversation, but allowing him just to vocalize how he felt, and that will have been a help for him, because that will have been a help to him, because he's been able to vocalize what was in his heart and not keep it in, and open his heart really to, not that he would know, but opening his heart to the Holy Spirit to start whispering things. So yeah, brilliant. You know, if there was one aspect of the role that it was the most difficult, what would you say it is? I know we're painting a picture here of a very difficult role, which it is. You know, that's the reality of it. I'll ask you about some positive things in a minute, but let's just finish on this bit of the challenging role that it is. What are the most difficult aspects? One most difficult aspect of the role would you say that you got? Oh, I've got to deal with this now.
Yeah, I think we work a lot with Children's Hospital, And so I think dealing with and very poorly children who have died or are on their way to end of life journeys is always really difficult. Dealing with their mother, because I had this reflection the other day when I had 2 deaths I had to attend. I can sit and I give a blessing and anoint with oil and the rest of it. But I didn't really feel like I'm doing much here. What am I actually doing in the scheme of things? I'm not bringing the child back. I'm not doing anything like that. And it's not very helpful in my own world, in my own view. Now, obviously, the family would have found it profoundly helpful. But within my view and my mind, I was thinking, what am I doing? How is this helping in any way, shape, or form? This is just a really bad and sad situation. And I left the first one, and I was thinking really about sitting in grief with people, sitting in the grief. Like, what would Jesus do when he was when he was walking around the earth? He was just sat with people. He just mourned with people. He grieved in sad situations. He understood, and he journeyed with people. And that was really reflected. So I went to the second one with that in mind, of sitting with grief. And I sat down at the bedside. I usually stand, but I was asked to sit, and I sat down at the bedside. And for about the first minute or a minute and a half, I didn't say a word. I just sat and breathed in and out with them. To help them understand. I understood some of the weight that was going on in that situation. The hardest thing for me within Wales, being a chaplain, I think, because all of the health boards will deal with that, is sort of dealing with the child death. Because it's difficult to say, when somebody dies, they've lived a full life. But it's difficult to help somebody understand that the fullness of a child's life is complete, even if it's only a couple of hours or a couple of days. And so that's, for me, that's probably that is weighty, but that's the difficulty.
Yeah, but this is the reality of it. You're being raw with us, and that's the point of getting you onto the channel, so that people can really understand and hopefully begin to appreciate this role. Like you sort of mentioned at the top of the interview that, people think, oh, it's a nice cup of tea at bedside and that's it, and then you go, you find a quiet place you can pray and read until the next sort of cup of tea. But it's far from that. And so, yeah, thank you for being so open with us, Ben. There are some sort of positive moments, aren't there, surely, in this role? I would, correct me if I'm wrong, I would say that 90% of the role is challenging, okay, in that you're dealing with stuff that is fairly negative, but maybe 10%, that's a guess, okay? Yeah. That's a guess. 10% that encourages you and you're lifted, or is it actually less than that?
Yeah, I think it's difficult because when patients are in hospital, they're sick usually, and when they're not sick, they're leaving hospital. Yeah. So it's always great when somebody gets discharged, but really you're not dealing with them when they get discharged. You're only dealing with them when they're sick. Yeah. And so there's always a positive note. Not everyone who comes to hospital dies. Obviously, we know that. And so there is always positives for them, but usually when they get discharged, it's then for their local pastor to deal with. It's not us to step in and deal with them. However, there are moments that we find, and I think a couple of things. Firstly, I think hearing people's stories that I would never have met in any way, shape or form, other than the hospital. The hospital brings them in. I have a conversation with them. I remember one gentleman, a retired minister, quite elderly, and I walked in to the bedroom where he was, the 9-bedder, and he looked so depressed, and I thought, this is going to be a tricky one. And I sat down next to him, and he was crying, and I said, is everything okay? And he said, I'm just so in love with Jesus. And I was just amazed that what I thought was depression it wasn't that at all. This human was just wrecked by his love for Jesus. I thought, like, how incredible, just fully,
Wow.
besides himself, that Jesus was just so beautiful. And it's just how he is. That was his character, just fully obsessed, and really put an imprint into my life, and to help me understand what does it mean to really love Jesus,
Yeah.
And what a treasure. There's other stories of going. This one lady, she said to me, share this with everybody, but I'd gone in to see her. She was end of life, and wasn't looking good at all. They were praying for healing. It didn't happen. And I went in, and I left the hospital. It was on a Thursday or Friday. I saw her last thing. And I prayed, God, would you just keep her till I'm next in? Would you just keep her till I'm next in the hospital? So Monday. It was at the time. Would you just keep her till Monday so I could see her again? And so all weekend I was just thinking, God, please, I just want to see the family again. I just want to see her again. And I came in Monday, walked onto the ward, and a nurse came up to me and said, oh, have you heard the news? I said, oh, no, sorry, I haven't heard the news. She said, oh, the palliative team have discharged her. Oh,
Wow.
what's that? So I walked into the room, I said, hello. I said, oh, have you heard? I said, has the palliative team discharged you? And she said a gentleman had come over the weekend and had prayed with them. And she said they looked at her on the Monday as they would normally. She's no longer end of life. She's been healed.
Come on.
And, you're just amazed. You're just there going, what a good God we serve when God does. And that's why I firmly believe God does still do miracles. Don't watch this and leave and think, oh, I serve a depressive God. No, God is amazing. God is far greater than we can imagine. He does miracle after miracle after miracle. You can do a miracle within your life. And God is in the business of turning people's lives around. And fundamentally, my job here, the best miracle I could see is a life turned around. The best miracle I could see is somebody who says, do you know what? I'm grappling with the meaning of why I'm here.
Brilliant.
And I'm starting to understand it might be because Jesus died for me. And there's hope and there's a life afterwards. And that's my aim. That's my goal. That's our ambition as chaplains, as Christian chaplains, that's what we want to see. We want to see God's kingdom here on earth, and we want to see it within our hospitals.
Lovely. Brilliant, Ben. Thank you for that. Thank you. That's so encouraging. Neither of us really have painted a great picture of hospital chaplaincy. But, you've been real, and you've sort of, laid it out there for people to actually understand. And even though you've touched on the challenges, and some people will still be on their hearts, I'd love to do this. Okay. I'd love to do that. I'd love to be in that role. How do they sort of make inquiries about that?
Yeah. So you've got to be accredited by a denomination of some sort. So whatever your denomination is, you'll need to make sure that you're accredited or training towards a credential to do that. And also, to be a chaplain itself, you need a job. So I think a lot of people think that they could just turn up in a hospital and say, I want to be a chaplain. But actually, there needs to be a job advertised as any other job. You wouldn't just walk into a Sainsbury's and just say, I want a job here. Well, there's no jobs going. So there needs to be a job. However, every chaplaincy team has a voluntary service, and you don't need to be ordained or have a credential or have a license to minister to be a part of the volunteer service.
Right.
And you don't need to, you don't need a job application to be a part of the voluntary service. So if you are, wherever you are across Wales, thinking I'd love to serve in some way, shape or form in my local hospital, then all you need to do is send the chaplain or the lead chaplaincy team an email to say, look, I want to volunteer, I want to get involved. Would I be able to? And then it'll probably be a process, a training process and an interview process that they need to do, which is about 5 weeks. And then once that's done, they're able to get out into the wards and support people as they would. And I would recommend anyone, if you're thinking you want to become a chaplain, get some voluntary work or something like that involved, so that you can then, once you come to application as well, you've got the backing of your voluntary work as well. So that's added as well. So there are ways to get involved. Reach out to your local chaplaincy team and see how best you can get involved. And another way to get involved is just by praying. Chaplaincy teams need prayer. We're, as I said at the start, we're religious people going into a secular organization. So remember your chaplaincy team. And when you're in hospital, request to see a chaplain, and ask them to pray with you, because they'd love it. There's nothing more than we love to do, is to be invited to someone's bedside and pray with them. So pray for us and invite us to come and see you next time you're in.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you. I want to, right at the beginning, you mentioned that hospital chaplaincy, but also you have a role as an assistant pastor in Beacon Church in Cowbridge. So I'm going to ask you to take the hat off, the hospital chaplaincy hat off for a moment now, okay?
Yeah.
And just put your assistant pastor hat on, but not to talk about Beacon Church, right? But it's in the context of Beacon Church. You are hosting a podcast with Pastor Chris Bullock called Sofa Talk. Did I say it?
Yeah, the Sofa Talk.
I said it quite posh there, didn't I? Sofa Talk. Sofa Talk. Yeah. I don't want Chris Bullock to get all the glory for this, Ben. So I'm asking you, okay, because it's your heart, it's your vision. He's already shared that. I want you to. You've got 2 minutes, okay, to share about Sofa Talk and the vision and how people can get hold of it, etc. And then we're going to close with that. Over to you, Ben. Sofa Talk.
Yeah. So the Sofa Talk. Yeah. The Sofa Talk by Beacon Church Cowbridge. You can find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify at the moment. Really, we just want to have conversations that we feel like the church possibly aren't having, or help educate people. Whether you're new to church, you've been in church for a little while, whether you don't have any faith background or any understanding, we want to give stuff to people. And so we have different episodes, some on history, some on church hurt, some on spirituality and spiritual warfare, etc. But really big topics that we feel like the church aren't tackling, that need to be tackled or had a conversation about. People want to hear stuff as well, so people are able to send in recommendations of, like, can you talk about this, can you talk about that? And really fundamentally, it's me and Chris, two pastors having a chat, and what we say isn't necessarily gospel, but we're just trying to head the conversation in the right direction, at least. Topical issues where we can try and bring the Bible into it. So we record, it's released every Saturday, and so we have a new episode every Saturday out. And you can find us, as I say again, on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. And also, if you want a topic, if you listen to it, you think, oh, this is all right, but I wonder if they do a topic on this or that or whatever it might be, send it in to us on our church Instagram is probably the best way, which is Beacon Church Cowbridge, at Beacon Church Cowbridge. And then we can do an episode on that as well.
Lovely. When you say it's not gospel, what you mean is, as opposed to, it is biblical, but it's not gospel.
As opposed to, it's biblical, but it's two guys, not Jesus speaking.
Okay. Lovely. This has been great. Okay, this has been great. Thanks for taking time to record this, Ben, and just opening your heart and just bringing people into the reality of what's involved with hospital chaplaincy. And just watch this space. Okay.
Bless you. Thank you for having me, Gwyneth.
No, my privilege. Honestly, my privilege. Bless you, Ben. Bye-bye.